Mbappé arrived at Real Madrid amid fanfare and sky-high expectation. The world watched as the French superstar finally swapped Paris for the Santiago Bernabeu, a transfer written into gossip columns for years and engineered to crown the next great era in white. But the honeymoon was short. The first months were noisy and uneven. New league, new teammates, new tactical grammar. Critics circled predictable talking points. Too much hype? Not enough adaptation. A forward who needed acres of grass to devastate. A brand as big as the badge. The narrative formed quickly. An all-timer trying to bend a historic institution to his rhythm, and discovering that Madrid bends for no one. By 2025, the tone changed. The learning curve didn't flatten, it sharpened. What began as isolated bursts became sustainable patterns, repeated actions without wasted touches, runs that pulled entire backlines out of shape, transitions he started and finished himself. The reliability. Madrid didn't buy moments, they bought inevitability. Match after match, Mbappé supplied it, not only with goals, but with the gravity that makes others better. Where the early discourse had obsessed over whether he would coexist with the squad's young core, the season answered with chemistry. Vinicius found more favorable channels because defenses tilted toward Mbappé's diagonal surges. Jude Bellingham received the ball in cleaner pockets because the Frenchman pinned center backs, then slipped away. Arda Güler's creativity gained an obvious outlet, a sprint line always available, always dangerous. His role under the new coaching staff was refined with quiet precision. Instead of living only on the shoulder, he learned when to drop 2 steps into the half space to create a wall pass, when to delay a run to let the cutback lane emerge, when to rotate wide to drag a fullback. A star to adopt became part of his rhythm rather than an obligation. Not a headless chase, but a trigger. One angle to the goalkeeper. One curved sprint to shut the pivot, one hand signal to compress the near side. Madrid's front line gained shape because its most explosive player accepted structure. There were still quiet nights. Madrid always has them. When deep blocks stifled space and every touch seemed to invite a foul. Earlier in his career, frustration would have led to isolation plays or long-range bets. Now, the response was different. Recycle possession, attack the box with a second wave. Let the chaos of a long Madrid attack create its own mistakes. His maturity appeared in little choices you don't notice on highlight reels. A disguised layoff to keep the tempo high. A delayed sprint to stay on side for the second phase. A near-post dart that created the far-post tap-in for someone else. The team's shot map told the story better than any soundbite. More attempts from central, zones, more cutbacks, fewer low-percentage launches from the wings. European nights accelerated the conversion from star to system. When Real Madrid needed verticality against elite mid-blocks, it was Mbappé who stretched the pitch without breaking shape. When they needed calm in an away leg, he slowed the game with contact, winning time and territory in equal measure. He became the reference point opponents game planned for and could still not entirely neutralize. He drew 2 defenders on the break, yet still found the reverse angle for a trailing runner. He hovered at the sustains excellence. He embraced that economy. The public persona, less combative, more concise, matched a private focus on training standards and post-match work. Teammates spoke about the small details he insisted upon. The timing of the first press, the angle of the counter-press after a lost pass, the insistence on a near-post attack, even when the cross seemed destined for the back post. It was not theatrical leadership. It was repetition. Numbers validated the eye test. His involvement in sequences leading to shots rose. His touches in the penalty area stayed elite, while his turnovers in build-up fell. His sprints that ended in box entries increased even when opponents sat low. He began to collect the kinds of goals Real Madrid fans quietly respect most, the ones that look simple because the work was done 5 actions earlier. A tap-in after a delayed run, a calm finish after freezing a keeper with a shoulder feint, a low curler into the far corner after shaping to pass. The spectacular still appeared, knifing counters, impossible angles, but the baseline was efficiency. What about the fit with the Madrid mythology, the tension between individuality and the collective? That was the acid test. Great forwards at the Bernabeu don't merely score. They synchronize with the building. They know when to set fire to a match and when to let the crowd breathe. Mbappé learned that cadence. He stopped chasing the perfect goal and started chasing the decisive one. He stopped demanding the game come to him and started placing himself where the game would go. The difference is subtle and absolute. He also rebalanced the conversation about defensive work. No one becomes a different player overnight. He is not a destroyer. But he closed angles earlier, forced play outward, and picked pressing moments that protected the midfield instead of exposing it. Madrid's distances tightened. The back line held 2 meters higher. Recoveries happened 10 meters further upfield. Those details cascade into points by March. There were human moments that anchored the season. The first time the Bernabeu rose for a substitution when he had not scored but had run a defense ragged. The smile with a teammate after a pattern rehearsed in Valdebebas finally clicked in a match. The apology after a miscommunication in transition, followed by the immediate correction on the next attack. The image that traveled furthest came after a late winner when he pointed to the crest, then to the pitch, as if to say, "This is where I belong, and this is where I'll prove it." Context matters too. Madrid's squad sits in a hinge era. Kroos and Modric gone, a new midfield geometry taking shape. Fullbacks asked to invert, then explode. A center-back rotation juggling fitness and form. Into that moving puzzle, Mbappé supplied a fixed point, a guarantee of threat that allowed others to specialize. Vinicius could vary between touchline winger and inside forward without the whole attack losing balance. Bellingham could alternate between crashing the box and constructing deeper, knowing the front line still stretched the field. Güler could risk the ambitious pass because there was always a run to reward it. The attack became modular rather than fragile. Inevitably, the season produced a handful of debates Madrid never tires of. Who should take penalties? How many minutes should the star play before a decisive European tie? Where is the optimal starting position? Left? Center? Hybrid? Those arguments are a feature, not a bug. They exist because the baseline is excellence. The coaching staff's answer was pragmatic. Start where the space is, finish where the goal is. In some matches, he began wide to attack a slow fullback. In others, he started central to pin a high line. The shape flexed around him without becoming dependent upon him. And that is the difference between a great signing and a great team. By spring, the early narratives had lost relevance. The talk shifted from adaptation to accumulation of points, of moments, of authority. The Bernabeu's approval is never permanent, but it is unmistakable. When a forward earns that sound, it signals something deeper than form. It signals trust. The dressing room mirrored it. Veterans appreciated the work rate. Young players admired the standards. The staff valued the consistency. You could feel it in how Madrid managed game states. More confidence to keep the ball when leading. More patience to probe when chasing. More control of tempo in the 10 minutes after scoring. The team learned not just how to win with Mbappé, but how to rest with him on the pitch. How to make the ball do the running after he did the damage. The future is always conditional. Fitness, scheduling, the randomness of knockout ties. But the arc is visible. Mbappé came to Spain to become the protagonist of the decisive months. The leap from headline to air requires exactly what this campaign displayed. A broad game narrowed into the right. Choices, speed tethered to structure, ego sublimated into edge. He did not erase every weakness. He made them small enough that his strengths decided. He did not demand Madrid revolve around him. He made himself unavoidable anyway. At 26, he occupies a delicate equilibrium. The brand demands spectacle. The fans demand commitment. The institution demands outcomes. Navigating that triangle without dulling the blade is the art. This season, he painted with fewer strokes and more clarity. The dribbles mattered because they led somewhere. The sprints mattered because they tilted the field. The shots mattered because they came from the zones that win titles. The metrics approve, the eyes agree, the points table confirms. So what remains? The same test that defines every forward who wears this shirt. The spring nights, when a season collapses into 90 minutes and one choice separates glory from regret. Everything about this year suggests he is built for exactly those moments. The game is still fast enough for him to outrun it, but now he can also slow it to his tempo. The team is still young enough to sprint with him, but now experienced enough to protect him. The club is still ruthless enough to demand more, but now convinced enough to believe he will deliver it. The journey from spectacle to standard is the hardest step a modern superstar can take. Mbappé has spent a year taking it, one deliberate action at a time. He will always be a magnet for noise. The trick is to make the ball louder. In Madrid, he has. If continuity follows, this won't read as a comeback or a correction. It will read as the beginning of an era in which the most marketable player in football also became its most reliable decision in the biggest games. The badge never bends for anyone, but sometimes it recognizes a player shaped to carry its weight. This season, Mbappé looked exactly like that player. Less myth, more mechanism. Less promise, more proof. And for Real Madrid, that may be the most valuable transformation of all.